Good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to the breakout session, Quality Management for Acumatica, Manufacturing and Distribution. I'm Debbie Baldwin, Senior Product Manager at Acumatica, and I'll be your moderator today, as well as one of your presenters. Ralph Kubek, Director of Sales and Services at eWorkplace app, will be doing our demo. But before we begin, I have just a few announcements. If you have any questions about the content of this session, then please enter them in the Q&A chat in your viewing console. We'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of the event, or we'll follow up one-on-one. If you're an Acumatica customer, we'd appreciate it if you'd submit a G2 review. Acumatica is giving a $25 Amazon card for each review, plus your review will unlock a $10 donation to Girls Who Code. If you'd like to submit a review, then click on the Submit a Review button in your viewing console. Also, we'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to give us some feedback, then click on the post-event survey link in your viewing console to share your comments about the event. Lastly, the entire R2 launch event, including this session, is going to be available on demand after the event. So if there were other breakout sessions that you wanted to go to and you weren't able to attend, then don't worry, because everything is being recorded and you'll be able to listen to it at a later date. So expect to see an email from us tomorrow with a recording link. Now on to the presentation, Quality Management for Acumatica, Manufacturing and Distribution. In today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about why your company may need a quality management system. What is a quality management system? I'll show you a high-level flow of the QMS module, and then Ralph is actually going to do a demonstration for you so that you can see the quality module firsthand. After the demo, if we have time, we're going to wrap it up by answering your questions. So why would you need a quality management system? As we get started, some of you may be wondering, how can a QMS solution help me? With QMS, you're going to be able to not only support your quality needs, but also streamline quality processes. Having better quality means meeting customer requirements. And if you meet your customer's requirements, then in turn, you'll have improved customer satisfaction. And then if you do have industry, regulatory, and other compliance requirements, the quality solution can also help you with this. The Quality Management Suite supports quality testing in areas like shipping, production, ongoing stability testing, and receiving. It also allows users to utilize checklists and inspections. It provides control over the non-conformance and corrective and preventative actions processes. And it supports a structured process to investigate, evaluate, document, and validate events that occurred so that you can take action to help eliminate errors to improve overall quality. And perhaps the most interesting aspect is that this was built natively within Acumatica by using the Acumatica toolset, using the Acumatica database, and it's fully integrated in the Acumatica ERP. For today's demo, Ralph is going to do a high-level walkthrough of the basic setup and flow of the quality solution. He's going to begin the demo by talking about the building blocks or the framework of the quality solution. So we'll look at tests, we'll look at test plans, the sampling criteria for those plans, and the rules and evaluation methods. Then we're going to take these tests and we're going to associate them to items or item classes, vendors or customers, and even bills of materials for production. Once we have all of this setup completed, then you can decide where you want to collect this information and where you might need testing to be done. For example, we could add those QC triggers to receipts, production orders, or shipments. Once those triggers are in place, and then we receive, we ship, when we produce those items. Then we'll walk through how a QC order is created and processed and how we can control the non-conformance and the corrective action process. Now, I'm delighted to turn it over to Ralph Kubek, who is going to show you the solution. Ralph, 1 second, and I'll make
Thank
sure.
you, Debbie. Very good. Debbie, you can see my screen, correct?
Give it 1 second. I still cannot see your screen, Ralph.
Okay, I click share. I'm clicking share.
Yeah, I still do not see it. Okay, it looks like it's trying. There we go.
Very good. Thank you. Technology at its finest. So I am Ralph Kubek, is a member of the team that's been working with Acumatica since the summit in January, which seems like a lifetime ago in this new world. On the initial rollout of QMS solution built for Acumatica, I'm excited to do this session. It does take more than 20 minutes to go through all the details on the QMS solution, but my goal today is, and I'll try to do this at less than Mach speed, is to provide you a solid understanding of the power of the QMS solution that Acumatica is announcing so that you can work with your partner to obtain more insight. Now to the product. This is the main QMS menu. I'm going to go into QMS setup to go through a few organizational things that are important to quality individuals and also making certain you can maintain certifications. The first part is numbering and sequence is critical. There's a variety of transactions within the QMS system, and we have a numbering scheme that controls each and every one of those for traceability. Next, over here, quality systems vary based upon the entity. For instance, some entities allow the person that's doing the entry of test results to see those results. Some don't. Some people will allow people to override a test. For instance, if a test was going to be 1.000, there's some entities that will allow a user to accept an entry of 1.001. So we have some controls here that allow those things to happen. So again, this could align with the overall QC system, quality system within an organization. The bottom is one of the keys to the QMS solution. And we're going to talk a little bit about warehouse location IDs. I'm going to use bin versus ID just for my language. This is important that because when items are tested that are going to be received, produced, or shipped, QMS will move those into a quarantine location. Again, we not only want to validate that it passed the test, we also want to put it into a bin where it's quarantined. We use a bin because you could use the standard Acumatica features to prevent an item in that bin from being sold, how it's used to be computed when it's available, and each location for quarantine needs to be here. After we go through some setup, the other thing near and dear to a variety of people's hearts is security. So we do have 3 roles in security. We have a QA analyst. That's the person that's actually going to record the results. We have a QA person. That's the person who, after the tests are conducted, can evaluate the results, post the results, and move the material from that quarantine location. And lastly, we have a QA manager that has the ability to create tests and do other setup activities. There's a couple configurations that will be key. Severity levels is a key to the system because not only are we going to be doing testing, we're going to go through a computation to determine whether those tests pass. Many entities just use major, medium, and minor. You could begin to add your own for your own purposes. We also have test method and test categories. Those are 2 controls that get attached to tests for purpose of reporting and analytics. Next is tools. Tools are what we use potentially when we're doing quality. And so we have a tool master that indicates we have a tool, a description. We keep track of the status of this tool, whether it's on hold, whether it's active, whether it's in calibration or retired. Notice that we could look at the last calibration date and the next calibration date. So we could use all the standard processes within Acumatica to alert you whether you are using a tool and the appropriate tool as well as it's in compliance. Next, we need to go into one of the pillars of the system, which is tests. Tests are what we perform to an item to determine whether it's going to pass or fail. We have a test, we have a test ID, we have a description, we could attach one of the tools that I just mentioned. We do allow testing to be recorded in one of three methods: a numeric method, alphanumeric method, or Boolean, Boolean being go, no go, pass, fail. If it is numeric, we then ask for the unit of measure that we're going to be measuring against. I already talked through the fact that we do have test categories and test methods that allow you to categorize these, report on these, and also do some analytics. You could also see here we have test steps. We not only want to help you control the tests that are done, but we want you to help you control what happens before, during, and after those tests. So we could, in the beginning, we might have to test a tool, then we might need to put on PPE, and then near the end, we need to turn the power off. Now that we have these tests, we have test plans, which is another pillar within the system. A QC test plan is a test or a group of tests that are associated with an item or a group of items and controls the test that will be done when an item is received, produced, shipped, or in process. In a few minutes, you'll see how we could take these test plans and make them specific to an item. A test plan has an ID, a name, a description. We use the revisioning control, much like in core Acumatica bill of materials. We also have effectivity dates. In some industries, it's common where the testing that's going to be done in the winter is different than the testing that's going to be done in the spring. Once we do that setup, then we begin to assign these tests that we just set up to these test plans. Important to note that on this screen, we begin to define those severity methods. We already talked about severity a little bit, and we'll talk about it more a little later. Then for numeric items, we indicate what the minimum, target, and maximum value is we expect. If it's an alphanumeric, what are the terms that we're looking for someone to give us in terms of making it a pass, fail. Finally, if it is going to be a Boolean, true, false, we're denoting what's the correct result are we looking for. Is it a pass or is it a fail? The result criteria is very important. Again, what we want to do is we're going to be taking samples during the receiving process, and we're going to make a determination whether we want to pass or fail. And we have, again, medium, small, and minor. And then when we do get into an item setup, we can see we have rigorous testing, moderate testing, and flexible testing. Rigorous testing might be for those items during the initial startup. It could be for a new vendor or potentially a vendor that we had on probation. We then could have moderate testing for vendors that have already been qualified, set up. How does all this begin to connect to items? So I'm going to go into the inventory screen, and I'm actually going to first of all start out in inventory classes. Why am I starting out in inventory classes? Because maybe I'm a QC person, an engineer who's responsible for controlling 300 different types of paints that we're manufacturing. So now, as part of the item class setup within Acumatica, you could begin to denote whether something is going to be QC required. Then going to the triggers that Debbie had talked about, we could do inspection when it's received, when it's shipped, when we're going to at the end of production, ad hoc testing. We also support testing when something is kitted. To set these up, someone assigns one of those test plans that we just talked about. You then indicate this result criteria. Again, flexible, moderate, rigorous. We'll go into the definitions of those and how those pass, fail. How are we going to inspect this? Is it going to be 100% inspection, or is it going to be sampling? And if it's going to be sampled, we have sampling plans set up. At the bottom, we begin to see the test plans that were brought in, and we do have the capability of taking what I might have used the term template before and change that for this specific test. Once this is done, you'll see that under the actions capability, we have the capability of copying this to all the stock items. So now, again, in one place, I've gone ahead and I've set up a set test plan. I can move all those to the 300 different types of paints that we have. Also, what's going to happen is, as new items are added to this product class, it's going to inherit those conditions. You might say, well, that's all well and good, but I have some items that have unique testing requirements unto themselves. So I'm going to go into the item master screen, and I'm going to look up the shell, Again, embedded into Acumatica is now a screen related to quality control. And now I'm going to scan down at the bottom first, and I see those tests that were part of this test plan, and I could go ahead and make this test result maybe a 3 to make this test plan unique for this item. More importantly, in terms of the construction of the system, as Debbie alluded to, you can see there's a plan for a vendor and a customer plan. We have this global test plan for receiving, that is going to be used most of the time. Maybe we have some vendors that have been certified. We have our Class 1 vendors that we could have different test plans on versus, again, vendors that might be on probation. In terms of customer plans, we do support shipping when we are going to be doing the shipping process. And again, we might decide that we're going to have a different set of forms for testing when we're shipping to Boeing versus when we're shipping to Airbus. Now that's quite a bit in testing, but one of the things that we did talk about was the inspection of work in progress items. So I'm going to look into a bill of material, and now what we've done to the bill of material file is we've taken the standard routing, we've indicated that we have QC is required, and now for this particular item we can attach a test plan, the same type of test plans we talked about before, to attach those to a specific bill of material, and then what those target values are. It's important to note this is where I'm going to use the term gate material. We've talked about quarantine material. When an item is going from receiving into stock, we gate material here. This is what we want to do is that before this Operation 10 is complete and moved on to Operation 20, we want to prevent that transaction from happening until someone performs the actual QC tests. So I just want to take a step back and look at the graph, the PowerPoint that Debbie talked about. We've gone through the test plans, how we link those together, where we have our triggers, and now what I'd like to do is show you a couple basic flows as it relates to how this quality control system will work. I'm going to enter in a new purchase order. It brings up the standard purchase order screen that we're accustomed to. Everyone might end up adding purchase orders in a slightly different manner, but I'm going to show you the manner in which I will enter them. So I'm going to order the shell that we have talked about and you've seen a few times. I'm going to enter in 1. I'm going to take this order off hold. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go through and approve it. Once it's approved from this screen, for purposes of today's section, I'm going to go in and actually receive it from this screen, and all I need to do in my system is put in a vendor reference number, and then I can release it. This is where quality control really takes over in terms of QMS and quarantine. First of all, someone sees that this item is actually going to require QC inspection. We then have talked about the fact that while it was purchased to the warehouse location and it was initially put into the receiving location, QC has actually moved it into a QC location so that it is now quarantined, and again, we have controls over what could happen to the item. You see that there's a QC number there, but I'm actually going to change hats. If this were on live and on stage, I would have put on a different hat. I would have said I'm one of the QC people that's walking around the warehouse. All the standard Acumatica methodologies in terms of how I'm alerted for something could be done, but I'm just sitting on a dashboard and I see an alert that comes up that I see a QC inspection needs to be done for a receiving item. I can now drill into this. This is the QC order screen is going to be the same, whether it's an in-process inspection, finished goods, or receipt. So I'm just going to talk about this for a few minutes because you're going to see it many times again. Because it's a QC receipt, it's giving me all the details I should know. It's coming from receiving, the PO number, what the item number is, how I'm handling sampling, and a variety of other information. At the bottom, I see a screen where I could put in results. Now, there is a mobile application that this can be done on, but I'm going to start using this screen for today. Notice there's an assigned to column. In some cases, we need to have certain people do certain certifications in order to be able to pass those tests, so we could assign that. I'm going to just put in some readings, and I'm going to enter 259. It's telling me I'm going to pass. I'm then going to enter in 410. That is going to pass. I'm going to enter in 35. This is going to allow me to fail because I entered 25, which is okay because I wanted the test to fail. And I passed those tests. Now I have a number of different choices to make if this were in the real world. Notice I could add some samples. I could also put this item on hold. I, in this case, because I have the proper security, know that I made a mistake, and I'm going to say, you know what, I really meant to key in 36. So now I could actually pass that test. Important, again, for auditability in the overall QC system, there's an event history log. This event history log is letting me know who did what when. It's also letting me know that something had failed and I changed the value to being a passing value. Now, again, I could change hats now because I was just that QC analyst, and all I was capable of doing was being able to put in those readings. Now there's a different hat that I need to evaluate these results on. So what the system is knowing is how many samples I was taken, how many failed, and then going through, again, the severity code, it's going to determine, based upon that setup we did, whether this item is actually going to pass or not. If it fails, I could put it on hold and I could begin to do some retesting. For today's purposes, I'm just going to move this along and I'm going to post these results. What's posting? Posting is taking that item and moving it from the quarantine location into the appropriate bin. You could see you have the capability to reject items if some of those rejected during the process, also scrap. And we talked about the fact that there were defaults for those items. Scrapping is kind of normal in situations when we have destructive testing that's going on. So now I've just completed the entire process of how I would set up an item that requires QC inspection for receiving, the standard process, how the operator out on the shop floor receiving dock is using Acumatica, just like they normally would do, but we put the layer on for the QC people to be alerted that they need to test something, and then how they go through the testing process. Before we get into some forms, I just want to quickly go into production, and I'm going to enter an order for that exhaust. I just want to show you how this handles the gating that we've talked about through transactions. So I'm going to go ahead and save this transaction. Again, in my little world, all I need to do is I need to release this order. And now I'm going to move it, right? Somewhere along the line, I'm that person on the floor that's saying I'm done with operation 10. I'd like to move it on to operation 20. As should have happened, I'm getting a message that's saying, wait a minute, there was some QC that was needed to be required. I'm not going to allow you to move that anywhere forward. So now, again, I'm going to change hats, and I'm going to pretend I'm that QC person. I'm going to log into my dashboard. I'm going to see the fact that I was alerted to that I need to process a QC order. I need to inspect this item. Again, the top is going to contain the details that you need to have. The bottom is where I'm going to enter these test results, all the same aspects of who could be assigned this test, etc. In this case, I'm just going to pass both of these tests so that we can continue to stay on time and deliver. I'm going to complete this test and post this test, but again, that's going through the evaluation process, which is going to allow me to make certain that we can move this process along. Now, if I go back into production orders and I go into production order maintenance, I'm going to go back to that last QC order that I just did. I'm now going to be able to go into this action, and I'm going to be able to create this move. And I'm going to move this, I'm going to release this. So now the system has validated that, yes, the QC people have done their job, and now it could be moved to the next process. I'm going to stay on this screen for one more second, because I'm going to go into the next transaction, because I'm going to move this to the next step, because there's been some people who have asked us, when I create this move, this final move, I'm going to move it out of operation 20. Some people have indicated that why was there not an inspection operation at that operation 20? We know that within Acumatica, people could have multiple routing steps. So not every case will the item end on the same operation to be put in stock. So that's why we denoted that we have a QC when it's being produced. That will get triggered whenever the item is going into production for the final time and is finished. Again, it takes over. We know there has to be QC. We're moving into a QRT location. You can see there's a QC order there. Again, I'm not going to drill into that. The QC person would have been alerted to that particular transaction, and then I could have gone in and actually processed that transaction the same way I did before. This last area that I'm going to go into in a little bit for just a couple seconds is I'm going to go create a sales order. Again, another typical way where people want to begin to test and validate that things are going to be quality controlled when they're being moved forward. I'm going to enter an order. I'm going to enter an order for this item called Shell. You can see there's 2 new fields on this. There's a field that's letting us know that this item is QC required, so the operator will know that. You could also see that there's a button that says Generate QC Order. That QC Order button is there because what happens in many cases, right, I have a multiple line order, and I'm going to go back to that first line and make certain it's 1. I'm going to save that. These controls are here so that if I do need to partially ship this order or just ship line 1 versus line 2, I could go ahead and indicate that I don't want a QC order generated this time. I'm only going to generate a QC order for that line 1. Now I can go up and generate a QC order. That is going to alert someone in quality control that they need to go out and perform that quality control order. 54, answer the appropriate questions related to that test. Important to note that we're controlling that by gating it, so the next step in the standard Acumatica process would be to create a shipment, and we're not going to allow that shipment to be created until the QC order has actually been processed. So again, somewhat at max speed, what I wanted to try to do is I wanted to try to go through and show you the first part of the QMS system related to testing and controls and how we quarantine items, also how we gate items during production. Clearly, reports and forms are critical, so there is a standard process by which we could go through and we could create QC analysis forms. These are all user-defined using the core Acumatica tool set in order to create C of A's for you, and you can create those throughout the entire process. There is a complete history of all the transactions that are done for this item, so I could see all the readings, all the test plans, etc. Why is that important? Because in many QC areas, what we do want to do is we want to create control charts. I'm not the expert in the Acumatica designer for dashboards. You saw a number of dashboards which we'll go back into, but now I have the capability with that data you just saw to create some control charts so I could be alerted before a crisis happens that I have to actually go through quality. Again, that dashboard could have been placed in on the standard dashboard that I have in terms of tracking good vendors, bad vendors, why things are being rejected, etc. So that's a quick overview of the QC module as it relates to testing. If there is a module for CAPA and non-conformance, so what will happen is Debbie indicated that if any of those tests would fail, we could pass those on to that particular application, so that would be a controlled way that we could process a non-conformance. We could do a detailed investigation, we could do root cause analysis, and then push that item along. Also, the inspection module, pretty important in some food industries, right? We're testing the product when it's coming off the truck, but there might need to be another QC test that's required of the truck itself. Was the truck door locked? Was the truck clean? Let's need to take a recording of the temperature of the truck so that we could validate if it was a frozen food, the truck was at the proper temperature for frozen items. So that takes us through what I wanted to cover in this short period of time. Hopefully this gave you a good sense of what the QC system could do. And Debbie, back to you for questions.
Wow, Ralph. That was incredibly insightful. Thanks so much. We're now going to move to the Q&A portion of this event. We have about a minute, so we'll try to get to as many as we can. If you haven't submitted your questions, then you can do that using the Q&A text box in the viewing console. And if we don't get to your question, then what we'll do is we'll get with you, we'll send an answer to you one-on-one. Okay, so we'll take a few questions. One of the questions that we have is, do you need both, and Ralph, if you can answer this, do you need both distribution and manufacturing modules?
The answer is no. The difference between the offering for distribution is that that offering does not include the support for production and with QC. So if you are a manufacturer, you buy the manufacturing suite. That includes both those transactions as well as all the typical transactions for a distributor. Okay.
And while we're talking about that, what is the difference between the distribution and the manufacturing edition module?
The main difference between the two is that the transactions related to inspecting for a finished good item that's produced out of a work order, as well as the gating of work in progress. Those transactions only exist within the manufacturing suite of products because, again, if you don't have a manufacturing license for Acumatica, you can't get access to those particular modules. Hopefully that answers that question.
Okay. And one last question, because we're running out of time. Is this module only available to customers on 20R2?
The answer is no. It is supported in 2020 R1 as well as 2020 R2. Okay.
All right. So we're just about out of time. On behalf of myself, Debbie Baldwin, and our guest, Ralph Kubeck, thank you so much for joining us for the R2 launch event. Remember, if you're an Acumatica customer, don't forget to submit your G2 review and get your $25 Amazon card. So you'll see the link in a small widget next to your video. We hope to see you soon at our upcoming virtual event. Have a great day.